Okay, sir, stop walking. Hands where I can see him. Keep that dog back.
Walking my dog, deputy. He's on a leash.
We received a call about a suspicious individual in this neighborhood.
Suspicious? I live 3 blocks from here.
I need to see some ID right now.
Am I being detained? Because I know my rights.
Keep pushing and you're going to find out exactly what
Deputy,
you are.
with respect, I'm just trying to finish.
Hargrove County's Millbrook Trail ran along the eastern edge of a quiet residential neighborhood outside Savannah, Georgia. It was 6:52 a.m. on Wednesday, October 4th, 2023. Cool air, still morning, the kind of Tuesday that smells like dew and cut grass. The usual handful of retirees power walking, a woman pushing a stroller, a cyclist moving through without slowing down. Nobody paid much attention to the broad-shouldered black man in a gray army hoodie, moving at an easy pace with a Belgian Malinois on a short lead. Darius Cole had walked this same trail probably 400 times in the 3 years since he'd moved back home to Hargrove County. The neighbors knew him. The morning regulars waved. He had done 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan, earned a Silver Star, and retired at the rank of Master Sergeant after 22 years of decorated service. He was walking his dog. What Darius didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that in the next 31 minutes, his morning walk would set in motion a chain of events that would cost Hargrove County $8.1 million in a federal civil rights settlement, the single largest judgment in the county's recorded history, result in the termination of 9 sheriff's office employees, including 2 supervisors, send Sheriff Dale Pruitt to federal prison on a Civil Rights Act conviction, trigger a Department of Justice pattern or practice investigation exposing 11 years of racially discriminatory policing across 3 Georgia counties, and produce a reform package so comprehensive it became model legislation adopted in 14 states. Sheriff's Deputy Kyle Macon had absolutely no idea that the man he was about to arrest for obstruction wasn't just a black man in a hoodie who'd talked back. Darius Cole was a retired United States Army Master Sergeant. He had cleared buildings in Kandahar. He had testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee. He had trained soldiers who were now protecting this country. He had fought for rights he was about to be denied, 100 yards from his own front door. Before we go any further, I want you to drop a comment telling me, where are you watching from? City, state, country? Let me know. And if you believe a man who gave 22 years to this country shouldn't be handcuffed in front of his neighbors for walking his dog, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is going to show you exactly how deep a crooked sheriff's power can run, and what it looks like when the wrong man finally decides to end it. Darius Jerome Cole was 41 years old. He stood 6'2" and moved with the quiet, deliberate economy of a man trained to stay calm in situations that would break most people. He had a shaved head, a jaw like a cinder block, and a scar along his left forearm from a roadside explosion in Kandahar province in 2011, an explosion that killed 2 men in his unit and earned him a Purple Heart he kept in a shoebox in his closet. He didn't display it. He didn't talk about it. That wasn't who he was. Darius grew up in Millbrook, the black side of Hargrove County, in a shotgun house on Delaney Street with his mother, his grandmother, and a rotating cast of aunts and cousins. His father was absent. His mother, Vera Cole, worked double shifts as a licensed vocational nurse at Hargrove Regional Medical Center for 31 years without missing a single mortgage payment. She was the most disciplined person Darius had ever known, and the template he spent his life trying to match. He was an ordinary student at Millbrook High School, not gifted, not troubled, just present, grinding, watching. He played defensive end well enough to start, but not well enough to get recruited. He had physical discipline and a deep, restless need for structure. The summer after graduation, a recruiter sat across from him on a folding table in the county fairgrounds and told him the Army could give him a career, a paycheck, and a purpose. Darius signed the next day. He enlisted in 2001 as an infantryman, 11 weeks of basic training at Fort Benning, then airborne school, then the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg. He deployed to Afghanistan in 2003, 8 months into the ground war, as a 22-year-old private first class, walking patrol routes through villages where everyone could be an enemy and no one would tell you which ones were. He came back changed, in the way soldiers come back changed, quieter, sharper, and allergic to nonsense in a way that civilians often mistook for arrogance. Over 22 years, Darius climbed the enlisted ranks with relentless precision. He became a squad leader, then a platoon sergeant, then a first sergeant, and finally a master sergeant, one of the highest enlisted grades in the United States Army, a rank earned by fewer than 2% of all soldiers who ever serve. He completed 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq, and 3 training rotations to partner nations in Africa and Eastern Europe. He was awarded the Silver Star for valor during a 2009 ambush in Helmand Province, in which he exposed himself to direct fire for 11 minutes to extract 2 wounded soldiers from the kill zone. He was awarded the Bronze Star with valor during a 2013 raid in Kandahar that neutralized the Taliban weapons cache and prevented an imminent mass casualty attack on a civilian market. He trained soldiers who were now serving as officers. He built entire infantry training programs used at multiple Army installations. In 2018, Darius was selected to testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee on non-commissioned officer development, meaning senators asked him specifically to come to Washington and tell them how to build better soldiers. He sat at that witness table in his dress uniform and spoke for 40 minutes without notes. In 2023, after 22 years, 2 Bronze Stars, a Silver Star, and a Purple Heart, Darius Cole retired from the United States Army as Master Sergeant, returned home to Hargrove County to be close to his mother, and bought a 3-bedroom house on Millbrook Trail. He adopted a Belgian Malinois he named Ranger, the same breed used by military working dog units. He walked that dog every morning at 6:45 a.m. because routines kept him grounded and because Hargrove County in October was genuinely beautiful. He had been home for 4 months when Deputy Kyle Macon pulled up beside him on the trail. Sheriff Dale Pruitt had been in Hargrove County law enforcement for 26 years. He was 54 years old, 3rd-generation Georgia-born, and had been elected sheriff 3 times on a platform that never changed: keep Hargrove County the way it's always been. Voters in the county's white precincts knew exactly what that meant. So did everyone in Millbrook. Pruitt had started as a patrol deputy in 1997, made corporal by 2002, lieutenant by 2008, and won his first sheriff's race in 2011 by 41 points, running against a black challenger he publicly referred to twice at campaign events as that activist from Atlanta. The challenger had lived in Hargrove County for 19 years. Pruitt never faced meaningful accountability for either comment. He won re-election in 2015 and 2019 by similar margins. By 2023, Dale Pruitt ran Hargrove County Sheriff's Office with the comfort of a man who had never once been told no.
Deputy Kyle Macon was 29, 4 years on the force, assigned to the Eastern Patrol Sector, which included Millbrook Trail, the surrounding residential streets, and the predominantly black neighborhoods bordering them. Macon had received 9 use-of-force complaints in 4 years. 7 of the 9 involved black residents. All 9 had been reviewed internally. All 9 had been closed without discipline. He had been promoted to senior deputy 8 months prior. On the morning of October 4, 2023, Macon was 40 minutes into his shift when a call came through dispatch. Caller reported a suspicious male, large black male, possibly armed, acting erratically near Millbrook Trail. The caller gave no further description. No weapon had been seen, no threatening behavior had been observed. The call, investigators would later determine, had come from a number registered to a vacant property. No legitimate complainant was ever identified. Macon ran the route. He spotted Darius from 60 yards, a man walking a dog at an easy pace, no erratic movement, No visible weapon. Nothing. He pulled up alongside him anyway. Darius heard the cruiser slow before he saw it. Ranger stiffened beside him. Military working dogs read tension before humans do, and Ranger had been reading Darius for months. Darius didn't speed up. He didn't look away. 22 years of training had taught him that the fastest way to escalate a situation is to look like you're afraid of it. "Sir, stop walking. Hands where I can see them. Keep that dog back." Darius stopped. He put his right hand up slowly. He kept his left hand on Ranger's lead. A 65-pound Malinois needed to stay controlled, and he knew that. "I'm walking my dog, Deputy. He's on a leash. We received a call about a suspicious individual in this neighborhood." Darius looked at him steadily. He had done 2 combat deployments. He had been in rooms where the wrong word got people killed. He knew how to read a man's posture, his grip, his eyes. What he saw in Macon was not vigilance, it was an entitlement. "Suspicious? I live 3 blocks from here. I need to see some ID, right now." Here is where Darius made a decision that 22 years of military discipline had prepared him for. He assessed his options in approximately 3 seconds. He could comply without question, hand over his ID, swallow the humiliation, go home. He could leave, assert his right to walk away from a stop that lacked any articulable legal basis. Or he could do what his training, his instincts, and 19 years of watching this department operate in Millbrook told him was the only productive option. He looked directly at Macon's body camera. "Am I being detained? Because I know my rights. Am I being detained? Have you ever been stopped for doing absolutely nothing wrong? Type yes or no in the comments right now. Keep pushing and you're going to find out exactly what you are." Macon called for backup. Within 4 minutes, 2 additional Hargrove County Sheriff's deputies arrived. A woman walking a stroller on the far side of the trail stopped and pulled out her phone. A retired couple sitting on a bench near the trailhead did the same. By the time Sheriff Pruitt himself arrived, and he did arrive personally, to a routine patrol stop, which investigators would later note was itself unusual, there were 4 law enforcement vehicles parked on a walking trail and 3 cell phones recording every second of it. Pruitt stepped out of his vehicle, looked at Darius once, and said 7 words that would later be played in a federal courtroom for a jury of 12 people. "Get him cuffed. I'm tired of this." He had not asked Darius a single question. He had not reviewed the dispatch call. He had not examined the basis for the stop. He had simply looked at a black man who was not backing down and decided the problem was the black man. Darius Cole sat in interview room 2 at the Hargrove County Sheriff's Office for 47 minutes before anyone came through the door. His hands had been uncuffed when they brought him inside. Ranger had been left with a deputy in the parking lot, which Darius noted with the precise, cataloging mind of a man who had spent decades gathering information under pressure, was the one thing Macon had done correctly that morning. The room was standard: concrete block, dropped ceiling, a bolted table, 2 chairs, a camera mounted in the upper corner. Darius sat with his back straight, hands flat on the table, and waited. He had waited in worse rooms. He had waited in rooms where the sounds outside the door were not footsteps, but gunfire. He could wait. At 8:39 a.m., Sheriff Dale Pruitt walked in alone. He sat down across from Darius with the loose, proprietorial ease of a man who had been doing this for 26 years and had never once lost. He set a yellow legal pad on the table. He did not read Darius his rights. He did not offer him an attorney. He looked at him the way men look at problems they are accustomed to making disappear. "You want to tell me what your problem is out there?" Darius looked at him for a long moment. He looked at the camera in the corner of the room. Then he looked back at Pruitt. He reached slowly into his front pocket of his hoodie. Pruitt's hand moved toward his hip. One of the deputies visible through the door window shifted his weight. Darius reached his retired military ID card on the table, then his Department of Defense benefits card,
Then a folded document he had been carrying in his pocket for 3 years, his DD-214, his official military discharge paperwork, the document that listed every rank, every decoration, every verified fact about his 22 years of service. He unfolded it and slid it across the table without a word. Pruitt looked down. "My name is Darius Jerome Cole," Darius said. His voice was level. He spoke toward the camera. "I am a retired United States Army Master Sergeant. I completed 22 years of active duty service. I deployed to combat in Afghanistan twice and Iraq once. I was awarded the Silver Star for Valor in Helmand Province. I was awarded the Bronze Star with Valor in Kandahar. I testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee in 2018 at the request of the committee chair. I own a home at 114 Ridgeline Court, 3 blocks from where your deputy stopped me this morning. I was walking my dog on a public trail at 7:52 a.m. I committed no crime, I violated no law. I invoked my constitutional rights clearly and correctly."
He paused. "I want you to look at that camera, Sheriff, because everything I am about to tell you is on the record. Your deputy stopped me without articulable reasonable suspicion. You ordered my arrest without probable cause. That arrest was recorded on 3 private cell phones and your own deputy's body cameras. I will be filing a federal civil rights complaint with the Department of Justice before this building closes today. And I want you to understand something clearly." Darius leaned forward slightly. "I have spent the last 4 months watching this department operate in my neighborhood. I've talked to my neighbors. I've collected dates, badge numbers, and names. I am not the first person your office has done this to. I am just the first one who has the time, the documentation, and the institutional knowledge to make sure it never happens again." Pruitt stared at the DD-214. His jaw had gone tight. The legal pad in front of him remained blank. He stood up, left the room, and did not come back. Darius was released without charge 40 minutes later. No paperwork was filed, no report was generated. Macon's body camera footage was logged, tagged, and internally flagged for administrative review, a designation investigators would later learn that the Hargrove County Sheriff's Office used specifically to quarantine footage it did not want seen. It was already too late. 2 of the 3 people who had filmed on the trail that morning had already posted their footage online. By noon, it had 80,000 views. By midnight, it had crossed 4 million. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from. And if you believe a Silver Star recipient shouldn't be handcuffed on a public trail for walking his dog, hit subscribe. Because what comes next is going to show you that what happened to Darius Cole that morning was not a mistake. It was not a misunderstanding. It was the most recent entry in an 11-year pattern of documented, systemic, deliberate targeting. And the data that the DOJ investigation uncovered is going to make your blood run cold. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division opened its investigation into the Hargrove County Sheriff's Office on November 2, 2023, 29 days after Darius Cole's arrest. What they found over the following 8 months was not a department with a few bad actors. It was a department that had been operating as a constitutional violation machine for over a decade, with full knowledge of its leadership and 0 internal correction. The numbers were staggering. Black residents of Hargrove County made up 31% of the county's population. They accounted for 79% of all pedestrian stops conducted by the Sheriff's Office between 2012 and 2023. Not 31%, not 50%, 79%. That is a disparity ratio of 2.5 to 1, meaning a black resident of Hargrove County was 2.5 times more likely to be stopped by a sheriff's deputy than a white resident, controlling for every other variable investigators examined. Of those stops, DOJ investigators found that 61% lacked documented reasonable suspicion that met the legal threshold established by Terry v. Ohio. Deputies were stopping people, overwhelmingly black people, and either failing to document justification entirely or documenting justifications that had been fabricated after the fact.
Investigators cross-referenced body camera timestamps against written report filing times and found that in 34% of cases flagged as suspicious, the narrative justification in the report had been written more than 4 hours after the stop occurred, a pattern consistent with retroactive fabrication. Deputy Kyle Macon's individual record was worse than the department average. In 4 years on the Eastern Patrol sector, Macon had conducted 847 documented pedestrian stops. Of those, 91% involved black individuals. In 67% of those stops, his written reports cited descriptions, acting suspiciously, matching a description, loitering, that either were unverifiable, internally inconsistent, or directly contradicted by available body camera footage. Of the 9 use-of-force complaints filed against him, DOJ investigators determined that at least 6 described conduct that should have triggered disciplinary proceedings under the department's own written policy. All 9 had been dismissed by the same internal affairs supervisor, a 20-year Pruitt loyalist named Captain Gerald Foss, without formal investigation. But the most damning finding was not about Macon, it was about the dispatch call that had launched the stop on Darius Cole. DOJ investigators traced the call to a prepaid phone purchased at a gas station on Highway 17 4 days before the incident. Cell tower data placed that phone in the parking lot of the Hargrove County Sheriff's Office at 11:47 p.m. on October 3rd, the night before the stop. The phone made a total of 3 calls in its operational life. 1 to the Hargrove County dispatch line at 6:48 a.m. on October 4th, 2 to a number registered to Deputy Kyle Macon. The stop had not been random. On February 14, 2024, a federal grand jury in the Southern District of Georgia returned indictments against 5 individuals connected to the Hargrove County Sheriff's Office. The charging document ran to 61 pages. Sheriff Dale Pruitt, Count 1, deprivation of rights under color of law, 18 U.S.C. Section 242, for ordering the unlawful arrest of Darius Cole. Counts 2 through 8, deprivation of rights for 6 additional unlawful arrests documented by DOJ investigators. Count 9, conspiracy to obstruct justice. Count 10, falsification of government records. Deputy Kyle Macon, Count 1, deprivation of rights for the stop and arrest of Darius Cole. Counts 2 through 5, deprivation of rights for 4 additional stops determined to have been fabricated. Count 6, filing false police reports. Count 7, conspiracy. Captain Gerald Foss, the internal affairs supervisor who had buried 9 complaints against Macon and dozens more against other deputies, conspiracy to obstruct justice and misprision of felony for deliberately suppressing valid misconduct complaints over a 7-year period. 2 additional sheriff's office lieutenants who had been present during the body camera quarantine after Darius's arrest were charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice and evidence tampering. 5 people indicted, every one of them for their role in either committing or systematically enabling 11 years of constitutional violations to the residents of Hargrove. The trial began on September 9, 2024, in the United States District Court of the Southern District of Georgia, Judge Helen Carver presiding. The courthouse in Savannah filled every morning. Reporters came from Atlanta, from Washington, from 3 national television networks. People drove from Millbrook and sat in the gallery in silence and watched. Darius Cole testified on the second day. He wore his Army dress uniform. Every decoration was present, correctly positioned, correctly mounted. He sat at the witness table with the same stillness he had displayed in Interview Room 2 11 months earlier, and he walked the jury through the morning of October 4th with the methodical precision of a man who had spent 2 decades debriefing operations to commanding officers who needed facts, sequence, and clarity. He did not perform outrage. He did not raise his voice. He simply told the truth in the exact order it happened, and the truth was enough.
Deputy Macon had no legal basis to stop me, Darius told the jury. I was walking on a public trail at a normal pace with a leashed dog. I was not acting erratically. I had not committed any crime. When I asked whether I was being detained, I was invoking a right that every American has. That question, am I being detained, is not obstruction. It is the Constitution. Sheriff Pruitt arrived at that scene, looked at me for less than 4 seconds, and ordered my arrest. He did not ask a single question. He made a decision based entirely on what I looked like, and he had been making that same decision about people who look like me in that county for 11 years. The prosecution called 6 additional victims. All were black residents of Hargrove County. A nurse who had been stopped 3 times in 18 months on her way to work. A high school football coach was arrested for disorderly conduct when he asked Macon why he was being searched. A 67-year-old retired postal worker who had been detained outside his own home while taking out his garbage. A college student stopped 4 times in 2 years on the same stretch of road between his apartment and the community college where he was studying to become an electrician. All of them had filed complaints. Every complaint had passed through Gerald Foss's desk. Not one had resulted in discipline. The cell phone videos from Millbrook Trail were played for the jury in their entirety, all 3 angles, simultaneously on adjacent monitors. The jury watched Macon approach Darius with his hand resting on his weapon. They watched Darius stand perfectly still, hands visible, Ranger controlled at his side. They watched the escalation, the additional deputies arriving, the 4 vehicles on the walking trail. They watched Sheriff Dale Pruitt step out of his personal vehicle, survey the scene for 4 seconds, and issue his order without asking a single question. Several jurors stopped taking notes when Pruitt's words came through the courtroom speakers. They just watched. The defense argued that Pruitt and Macon had been responding in good faith to a dispatch call and that their conduct fell within the scope of reasonable law enforcement discretion. The prosecution dismantled that argument in 2 hours. Their expert witness, a former federal police procedures consultant who had trained officers in 31 states, was direct. There is no version of Terry versus Ohio, he testified, under which a man walking a leashed dog at a normal pace on a public trail at 6:52 in the morning constitutes reasonable articulable suspicion. None. That standard has been tested in thousands of federal cases. Walking is not suspicious. A leashed dog is not suspicious. Being black in a residential neighborhood is not suspicious, and it has never been a legally cognizable basis for a stop under any court ruling in this country's history. The stop of Darius Cole had no legal foundation. The arrest had no legal foundation, and the dispatch call that preceded it, as the evidence now shows, was manufactured. He paused. This was not a mistake. Mistakes have a legal basis that falls short. This had no basis at all. The jury deliberated for 14 hours over 2 days. On October 3, 2024, exactly 1 year to the day after Darius Cole had been handcuffed on Millbrook Trail, they returned their verdicts. Dale Pruitt, guilty on all 10 counts. Kyle Macon, guilty on all 7 counts. Gerald Foss, guilty on conspiracy and misdemeanor. Both lieutenants guilty of conspiracy and evidence tampering. The sentencing hearing was held on December 11, 2024. Judge Helen Carver addressed each defendant individually before pronouncing the sentence. When she reached Dale Pruitt, the courtroom was completely silent. Mr. Pruitt, you were elected 3 times by the people of Hargrove County and entrusted with the authority of the law. You used that authority for over a decade to systematically violate the constitutional rights of black residents, people who paid your salary, people who lived under your jurisdiction, people who deserved the protection of the badge you wore and received instead of its abuse. You ordered the arrest of a decorated combat veteran on a public trail 3 blocks from his house. You buried the evidence. You protected the officers who carried out your policies. You betrayed every person in this county who believed the law applied to everyone equally. She paused for a long moment. The guidelines recommend 8 to 12 years. The scope of this misconduct, its duration, its deliberate concealment, and the number of individuals harmed demands a sentence that reflects the full weight of what you chose to do. The sentence of this court is 16 years in federal prison. Macon received 7 years. Foss received 5. The 2 lieutenants each received 3 years. The civil settlement was reached on January 22, 2025. Hargrove County agreed to pay Darius Cole $8.1 million, the largest civil rights settlement in Georgia state history. The settlement also mandated a comprehensive reform package, complete dissolution and reconstruction of the Sheriff's Office Internal Affairs Division under independent civilian oversight, termination of 11 deputies with documented patterns of racially disparate stops, implementation of a mandatory early warning system triggering review after 2 complaints, full public quarterly reporting of all stop data disaggregated by race, automatic supervisory review of all body camera footage when a complaint is filed, 140 hours of bias and constitutional law training for all sworn personnel, creation of a community oversight board with independent subpoena authority, and federal monitoring for 10 years. Hargrove County sitting sheriff resigned the day the settlement was announced. 2 of his 3 deputy chiefs retired within the week. Darius donated $3.1 million of the settlement to the Millbrook Community Legal Fund, an organization providing free civil rights legal representation to Hargrove County residents who cannot afford an attorney. He used another $1.4 million to establish a scholarship at his mother Vera's alma mater for first-generation college students from Southeast Georgia pursuing criminal justice and public policy. "I didn't do this for the money," Darius said at the press conference, standing in his army hoodie in front of the Hargrove County Courthouse. "I did this because I came home after 22 years of fighting for this country, and a sheriff decided the Constitution didn't apply to me on a walking trail 3 blocks from my house. I had the tools to fight back. Most of my neighbors don't. This was for them." The Georgia State Legislature passed the Darius Cole Law Enforcement Accountability Act in March 2025, requiring independent prosecution of all civil rights complaints against law enforcement officers in the state and creating criminal penalties for supervisors who knowingly suppress misconduct patterns. 14 states have since introduced parallel legislation. Dale Pruitt is currently incarcerated at FCI Jessup in Georgia. He will be eligible for release in 2040. His law enforcement certification was permanently revoked. His pension was forfeited in full. Darius Cole still walks ranger on Millbrook Trail every morning at 6:45 a.m. The Hargrove County Parks Department installed a small marker at the trailhead in April 2025. It reads, "On this trail, on October 4, 2023, Master Sergeant Darius J. Cole, USA, retired, refused to accept that his rights were less than anyone else's. His courage made this county better. May we be worthy of it."
What's your biggest takeaway from this story? Drop it in the comments right now. If this showed you why accountability matters, not just for ordinary people, but for the institutions that are supposed to protect them, subscribe. We're bringing you more stories that prove justice is possible when someone refuses to back down. Darius Cole had every tool in the fight. 2 decades of service, a Silver Star, a DD-214 that could stop a room cold, and he still got handcuffed on a public trail for walking his dog while black. Think about every person in that county who didn't have those tools. Everyone who filed a complaint that went into Gerald Foss's drawer. Everyone who got searched on the side of the road and drove home in silence because they didn't know they had options. This case proves 2 things simultaneously. Racial profiling reaches everyone, regardless of rank or record or resume. And accountability is possible when someone with the knowledge and the will to use it decides the answer is no. Final question. Should law enforcement supervisors who knowingly suppress misconduct patterns face the same criminal charges as the officers who committed the violations? What does real accountability look like from the top down? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next one.